You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast. This is season 3. It's episode 19. Kris Bryant looks back. Don't forget to listen, download, review. Most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Follow on the socials, Fly the W670 on Twitter, Instagram. Of course, we're on Facebook. You can also email Crawly and I, flythew670 at gmail.com. Well, Crawly, hope it was a good weekend for you. A couple of games for us to recap, and the sun was shining on Sunday, and it's going to shine again on Monday.
Yes, sir. And the sun is shining really bright in Arizona in a few of those games. If you were watching this weekend, the old high skies were in effect.
Something we got to talk about. Yep.
Yep. But Thursday, the Cubs play the Rockies, and the Cubs lost 9-8. Drew Smyly made his second start of the spring. Saying it didn't go well, though, is an understatement. He pitched 2 complete innings, Dustin, and faced 4 batters in the third, but didn't get out of the inning. First inning looked good. He in the second with 1 on, though, Brenton Doyle hit one to third. Morel slid to his right. He made a nice stop, but he bobbled the ball in the transfer. So it was kind of a tough play, but we'll see what happens. It was ruled a single. And so Smyly gets the next 2 batters out before leaving a hanging curveball over the plate to Julio Carreras, who put the ball on the berm in left center. Cubs are down 3-0. He then gave up a leadoff homer in the third inning to Ezequiel Tovar, 2 singles, a walk, and he left the game with the bases loaded and no outs. So Smyly pitched 3 innings of work. He gave up 5 runs on 7 hits, 1 walk, 1 K. But Dustin, the thing, I guess, and I know it's early, we don't get it, but he gave up 2 home run balls, and that was the big issue with him last season.
That's an issue, right? It was an issue last year. It's an issue again. And Craig Counsell can tell us, don't worry, but that was nerve-wracking. I don't know that right now, and we'll get into it throughout the rest of this podcast, but right now, I don't love the idea of Drew Smyly being the 5th starter.
Right. And as far as Smyly, he gave the old, you have to discredit the results. I was putting a lot of hitters back in the count when I probably had a chance to finish them earlier, but I was being stubborn, trying to throw pitches I might not normally throw. So, the one thing, Dustin, though, he did hit 95 on his fastball, and that's up from what he usually throws. He was doing some work this offseason with Driveline to increase velocity as well. And he was trying out that new splitter, but like we said, hopefully he stops giving up home runs. Some other notable performances, Dustin, from that game, especially off the mound. Hector Neris made his Cubs debut. He had an 8-pitch, 1-2-3 inning. But Daniel Palencia, the Cubs' young flamethrower, he struggled locating his pitches. He has fallen behind in most counts, going 2/3 of an inning, giving up 3 runs on 5 hits. He gave up 1 home run and had 1 strikeout. His fastball, Dustin, did hit 98, but that doesn't matter in the bigs if you're falling behind and they're sitting on it,
Right. You can't fall behind. You can't be in a hitter's count, as they like to say. Yeah, they'll catch that 98, 99 mile fastball.
Yeah. Ben Brown pitched 2 innings. He gave up 1 run on 3 hits with 2 walks and 3 Ks. We talked about the need for Ben to cut down on the walks. So, I do believe we're going to see Ben Brown sometimes this season, probably like in a relief role, not as a starter, but you can't be walking 2 guys an inning or something,
The free passes are something that they'll definitely want you to work out before you get a real shot at the big league level.
Right. And on offense, Christopher Morel was 2 for 2 with the walk. One of those hits was a double to straightaway center that just missed being a home run. Dansby Swanson, 1 for 2 with the walk. So he got his first spring training hit. Dustin, I know you were watching closely. How about
earlier than last year, right? Earlier than last year.
How about cleanup man Nico Horner, 1 for 2 with a 2-run RBI single to score Swanson and Morel. In the top of the 4th, Owen Cassie replaced Ian Happ. We're going to talk about that later, but he went 0 for 2. Happ was 0 for 2, but Casey continues to crush the ball, going 3 for 3 with an RBI, a walk, and 2 doubles. Dustin, I'm wondering if they are going to give him some time this spring, like in a game, to play first base. I'm just very curious if that's something that'll happen.
Yeah, he had he stood out. If you wanted to say like who stood out to you over this weekend, since we were last podcasting, Owen Cassie would be my guy. He's the guy that flashed the most since the last time you and I got together.
Absolutely. And then one last name from this game, 18-year-old Jefferson Rojas, one of the Cubs' top prospects, was 1 for 2 with a double. 18 years old, Dustin, Jesus. But I saw him in Myrtle Beach, and he's a shortstop, and he's really, really good. So we'll see what happens. But Friday, the Cubs beat the Sox 10-6, but that was a game where, you just got to look. If you were just reading the box score.
Hey, Listen, I'll take any win against the Sox, no matter how it happens, Crawly.
Absolutely. But if you looked at the box score, some of the pitchers' numbers didn't look great, but there was just both teams were having trouble with the ball in the sun. There was all sorts of drop balls. And to this day, Dustin, I still don't understand why, like if it's a pop fly, why they can't score that in air if you drop it. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother weird baseball thing, right? But at one point, you won't be shocked by this, I was very fed up, and in the Mully and Haw text string that the three of us have, I said, send PCA back to Iowa now.
Well, Justin Steele made his Cactus League debut. He looked good as he only gave up a walk in the first. He had a nice 1-2-3 inning in the second. He came out for the third and ran into a little trouble with one out. He bobbled a little chopper. Should have been ruled in air, but it was scored a hit. I don't know. He then gave up a double that looked foul to me. A sac fly scored the run, and then a wild pitch to score the second run. But he looked good in general, throwing 47 pitches over 3 innings, stretching out a little bit. The next pitcher who came in, though, was Javier Assad. And if you remember, Javier Assad had a really bad outing last time. And it looked like I said, in the box score, looked like he did, but he was the biggest victim of the sun. He gave up a broken bat single to the first batter he faced. It was wiped out on a nice double play, defensive play by Michael Bush, who had an over-the-shoulder catch, and he threw it to Assad, who was covering first for the double play. It was in the second inning of work. That's when PCA had his inning from hell. Assad hit the first batter he faced.
Inning from hell.
Inning from hell. Assad hit the first batter he faced. Then PCA lost the ball in the sun to put runners at second and third, which was then scored a double, right? Then PCA lost another ball in the sun that scored 2 runs. The White Sox scored another run on a ground out, and then PCA lost a third ball in the sun. So when you look at the box score for the game, Assad went 2 innings, gave up 5 hits, 3 doubles, 4 runs with a walk and no Ks. But in reality, he only gave up 2 hits, and one of them was a broken bat single, and none of those runs should have scored. So whatever.
Yeah, he didn't. Yeah, I mean, it's going to look worse in his box score. And, if the Cubs had lost this game, I'd be way more upset than I am about all of that. But since the Cubs won, I shrug my shoulders and I move on.
Right. And the next 2 guys that came out were guys that are going to be important in the pen. Julian Merriweather came in, nice 1-2-3 inning. We know how good Merriweather was last season. And Dustin, I feel that he's going to be either the setup man or the 7th inning option. But I'm kind of leaning towards setup man right now. The next pitcher was Jose Cuas, the first batter against Cuas hit a ball to Cole Roederer. He lost a ball in right field, and that was a leadoff triple, but Cuas stranded the runner by getting a pop-up, a strikeout. He hit a batter, but then a ground out to leave the runner stranded at third. But I got a feeling if Jose Cuas can repeat his mechanics and stay away from the walks, I think he's going to play a really big role in the pen. I know people were frustrated, but they overused him last season in September.
They had to, right? They had to. He was the guy he was like the only guy left healthy, right? He had a little gas in the tank still at that point.
Right. But, it left, I think some people were frustrated with him, but I think he's going to play a big role in this year. The Cubs got on the board in the 4th when Yan Gomes doubled, advanced to third on a ground out, and scored on a Matt Shaw single. PCA was hit by a pitch to load the bases, and then David Bodie drew a walk to score the second run. After Alexander Canario and Michael Bush drew walks, they advanced on a wild pitch and a stolen base by Bush. And then Mr. Clutch, Yan Gomes singled to score Canario. Miles Mastrobuoni hits a sac fly to make it 6-4. Matt Shaw walked, PCA flat out, but then Owen Cassie hit a 3-run blast to put the Cubs up 7-6. They end up winning the game 9-6. Alexander Canario was 1 for 1 with 2 walks and scored 3 runs. Yan Gomes was 2 for 3 with an RBI and scored 2 runs. Matt Shaw 1 for 2 with an RBI, and Owen Casey 2 for 3 with a home run and 3 RBIs. So there's that name again, Owen Casey popping up.
Yeah, Owen Casey really, again, like we said a couple minutes ago, just was the man of the weekend. If you were out there in Mesa or tuning into the Score or to Marquee, he was a guy you saw a whole heck of a lot of. And then Saturday we had a big debut for the Cubs, right? Shota Imanaga.
Yeah, it was. I loved it. I was glued to that TV, and it was interesting.
Made sure to fire up the DVR. I saw the first inning of his. Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting to watch his delivery because it has a lot of deception to it. There's some pauses and stuff. He also has a wide array of pitches that he threw. He had a nice 1-2-3 inning striking out Freddie Freeman. In the second, he gave up a single to Max Muncy that came after a called strike 3. Then he induced a ground ball that went to Nico, but Nico was going glove side, threw across his body, trying to start a double play, but Muncy beat the throw and everyone was safe. Then Andy Pagas crushed a 3-run home run to make it a 3-1 game. Imanaga then struck out the next 3 batters he faced. Imanaga came out and faced the first batter of the inning in the third, striking him out before being pulled from the game. He went 2.1 innings. He gave up 3 hits, 3 runs with 5 Ks. But I thought he looked really good. Like I said, we know he's going to give up the occasional home run. You just don't want guys on base. And again, that was a missed strike 3 by an umpire that led to a single and a play that Nico didn't make that, that's why 3 runs scored on that homer.
Yeah. Yeah. It was unfortunate, but overall I agree with you. I liked what I saw. Big picture.
Now, I'm not liking what I see from Hayden Wesniewski. He continues to struggle. He got 2 outs relieving Imanaga in the third, but in the fourth, he hit the leadoff batter, got a strikeout, gave up a single, got another strikeout, walked a batter to load the bases, and then gave up a bases-clearing double. 1.2 innings of work, he gave up 3 runs on 2 hits and 1 walk, 1 hit by pitch, and 3 Ks. But Dustin, he's got to find a pitch that can get lefties out. And with all the competition for the 5th starter spot, he needs to start moving because he hasn't looked that impressive so far.
No, he's been a little rough around the edges. There's no doubt about that. And again, we can keep saying, well, what are they working on? Blah, 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 blah. No matter what he's working on, it's not turning out very good.
And not only that, he's in competition for a spot. You know what I mean? You want to be the best that you are every time you're out there, but we'll see what happens. Carl Edwards had a nice 1-2-3 inning with 1 K. Mark Leiter looked much better this time out. Remember, we were talking last time about some concerns, but he threw a scoreless inning and he got 2 Ks while throwing that splitter for strikes. So a much better outing. Luke Little had a scoreless inning of work with 1 K, but 2 walks. So again, these young guys got to make sure that's the difference between being in AAA and being in the majors is you just cannot walk batters in the major leagues. It's going to come back to haunt you. Yeah. On offense, Matt Mervis and Mike Tauchman each hit their first home runs of the spring, solo shots, and Owen Cassie and Luis Vasquez also drove in runs. So the Cubs could not come back in this one, but like I said, it was a fun game to watch. And then today, Dustin, the Cubs took on the Guardians. Kyle Hendricks made his second start of the spring. I thought he did okay, but he didn't have his control that we usually expect from the professor. In the first inning, Dustin, he hit 2 batters in the forearm, gave up a single. The Cubs were down 1-0. He gave a leadoff single to Angel Martinez, walked a batter, then gave up an RBI single to put the Guardians up 2-0. They said on the broadcast, I didn't know this, Angel Martinez is the son of former Cub Sandy Martinez, who caught the 20K game at Kerry Wood. But now that makes me feel old.
Yeah.
In the third, he gave up a 1-run double, 1-out double, then a single and a wild pitch that allowed a run to score. So for Hendricks, he pitched 3 innings, gave up 3 runs on 5 hits with 1 walk and 1 K, a wild pitch and 2 hit by pitchers. So for me,
see, that's unusual, right? It's the 2 hit by pitch. Yeah.
2 hit by pitches, the wild pitch, even walks are not common for him. So just, I don't know, it's like I said, but with Hendricks, you have more of a track record of what you can expect with him. Hendricks was followed up by Hector Neris, who gave up 1 hit in a scoreless inning. So did Adbert Alzolay. He pitched a scoreless inning, 1 hit with 1 K. And Daniel Palencia, after struggling the other day, had a nice bounce back appearance with 1 scoreless inning of work, giving up no hits. As far as the offense is concerned, Dustin, I'm sitting there and I'm looking at
my guy, Miles Mastroboni. He's making a reason to make this roster. Can't believe it.
Well, I'm looking at the the lineup that they put out there, and he's playing left field. I'm like, why do they have Mastroboni in left field? I'm like, but he does hit a solo home run, and then Kevin Alcantara, Jaguar, he hit a home run, and he does the Jaguar paw. That's his thing. He kind of puts his Jaguar paw up when he's running around. Yeah. And then what about David Bodie hitting a 2-run homer? I mean,
I can hit home runs. I mean, the guy. I mean, this call me crazy, but the Cubs don't have a real DH. If you're gonna start our guy at third base, they don't have a real quote unquote DH day in, day out. And why not David? I mean, in all seriousness, why not David Bodie? Why not David Bodie to be that DH?
It's a good question, and I don't really have a good answer for
you. You could do a whole lot worse based on what you're talking about, right?
Right. No, I agree. I'm not sure why.
You may not want him out there on defense based on how this team is made up. But, I mean, if Christopher Morel is your everyday third baseman, then why not David Bodie DH him?
Yeah, I mean, his numbers are just pretty good, and so I don't know why. The only reason he was in the minors is that he ended up injuring himself a whole bunch, but he looks fine. He looks healthy, and he was crushing in AAA too. So I don't know why not.
Let Owen Casey be the DH.
My only question now would be, you guys talk a lot of, Cubs and White Sox on the Mully and Haw show, but I wonder, like, if a team like the White Sox would look at a guy like David Bodie. Again, it's going to be 1 year, $5 million. Why not just, give him a shot, see if the Cubs can come up with some sort of trade. And then the Cubs would get salary relief to put him a little bit away from that competitive balance tax. And maybe that money could go towards getting someone at the trade deadline.
This is season 3, episode 19. Kris Bryant looks back of the Fly the W 670 podcast. Don't forget to listen, download, subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. Of course, leave Crawly and I a 5-star review. Cub fans were buzzing this week about Sam Blum's article about Kris Bryant, reflecting about his time here in town. Crawly talked to Sam about the article and how Kris Bryant talked about his experiences with the Cubs.
Joining me now on the Fly the W podcast, I'm happy to have on Sam Blum, writer for The Athletic. Sam, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing great. The reason I wanted to have you on is that an article came out today about Kris Bryant, and it really has been the talk of a lot of different Cub fans. What was it that kind of drew you to the story of Kris Bryant?
I think it was just interesting. Like if you look back like 2 years ago when he signed with the Rockies, it didn't make a lot of sense to, I think, any average, let's just say the average baseball fan, for a lot of reasons. And then also he hasn't really like talked about it much. That was the other thing. I mean, this is, he's a pretty private guy. It seems like, even just from talking with him, it seems like he's low key. So it's not like a topic he's really been asked about a lot, especially with the Rockies. I mean, it's not like the national media is there a lot. It's not like, there's tons of interest in that team to begin with. So he's just kind of been living in, I guess, like in off the grid, at least in terms of, baseball superstars. And so I just wanted to kind of sense like, we're 2 years into this. It's not gone well. What's kind of been the problem? What kind of led everyone to this point? And it wasn't just Kris. I mean, we talked to Bill Schmidt, the Rockies GM, who, obviously was behind this deal. And it's still kind of, I come out of the article not really knowing the answer, but I feel like you have a better picture of who Kris Bryant is, why he maybe made this decision, and maybe why the Rockies made the decision to offer him the contract to begin with. So, that's really the whole purpose, is just to give people a better understanding. I mean, I think if you look up Kris Bryant before today, there were a lot of, podcasts or articles or, just aggregators writing about, how bad he's been, and nobody really knows how he felt about it. So I think that was the purpose of this. And he was pretty candid. I got to give him credit for that.
Yeah, that's the thing that really kind of shocked me, because he is a guy that's kind of low key and, doesn't really kind of, give too much information. He usually is very reserved. And, I think it was tough because when I'm reading your article and there was that sign, and I remember that sign clearly, it said worth the wait, in a Cubs uniform, and the Cubs drafted him. And, it happened before, especially like Mark Pryor was the one that always reminds me of, but the Messiah, the one that was going to lead us to the promised land of a World Series. And we thought it'd be Mark Pryor. And then with Kris Bryant, it just seemed like a cannot miss. And Houston passed on him, of all teams, and the Cubs get him. And, he was the college player of the year, and then he became the minor league player of the year, and then became rookie of the year, MVP the following year. And this guy just looked, he was about to punch his ticket into Cooperstown.
Yes.
And to me, I always just kind of wonder, like, he always seemed to handle it well, but it seemed like there's a lot going on in the background.
Yeah. And that's the crazy part of all this is, like, he fulfilled every expectation of him. Like, that's, it would be one thing if he like was that guy and it didn't work. And then he kind of looked back at the pressure and had a negative, feeling toward it, like all the expectations. But the crazy part of all this is, like, he had all that pressure on him, and then he proceeded to have like 2 of the greatest years ever. Right. I mean, he literally like helped carry that team to the World Series. It, break a curse. And, he's forever a hero in Chicago, I'd imagine. I know things didn't go well in his last couple, really in 2020 and for the entire organization those last couple of years, but he delivered on the ultimate promise. And so that's the crazy part of all this to me, is that he looks back at it, with some mixed emotions, I would imagine. And what you learn about Kris, or what I learned about Kris from talking with him, is like, this is, not everybody who does really well, or who is in the spotlight, or even thrives in the spotlight, enjoys being in that spotlight. And not everyone who's really great at baseball wants to be a superstar baseball player, in the sense that you're, known for playing the game and known for being great at it. And I think that's Kris Bryant. I mean, I cover the Angels a lot. You deal with I talk with someone like Anthony Rendon quite a bit. And I don't want to compare those two, because I think there are a lot of distinct, personality differences and things that those guys have said are very different. But I also think that maybe the one overlap is like, kind of playing into like, I'm like Mr. Baseball, and I want to talk about this and be front facing, and have everyone look at me, and that doesn't seem like who Kris is. And I think that's interesting. And it's also, just every person is different, whether they're a baseball player or they're not. It's an interesting dynamic. And I think for Kris, he's maybe in a spot where he thought he would be a little more comfortable. It's probably not worked out exactly as everybody hoped. I mean, the team is just so bad, and he's had these injuries, and he hasn't performed. And so, if he was going to Colorado to kind of escape some of the pressure and some of the, scrutiny, I think he maybe did in some sense, but also it's invited maybe some other issues and some other questions that are clearly, not going away anytime soon.
When you say that, I remember Randy Johnson. He was happy in Arizona, everything's good, and he, all of a sudden he went to the Yankees and all that pressure. And I remember him getting in fights with photographers and paparazzi. And like you said, it's not for everybody. But I remember with Kris Bryant, every time he moved up a level, fans were so excited. And then in 2015, he absolutely crushes it in spring training. He's clearly one of the best players and should have broke camp with the team. And that's when it got into that weird service time manipulation. Yeah. And I truly wonder how much that weighed on him, because he kind of, he filed that grievance, and that took a long time. It took forever to get that done. And I don't know, how much that bothered him. I like you said, just kind of a guy that's more reserved, and then all of a sudden kind of being the face of the union as far as service time manipulation is concerned.
Yeah. And that's, to be honest with you, that's a lot of what we talked about was centered more on the Rockies and his time the last couple of years. So I don't want to assess like his opinion on looking back at that. I mean, I think you can draw some sort of through line maybe with some of the frustrations that he discussed with me. And I mean, obviously that service time manipulation was a big deal at the time, and it has set up, maybe some of the things that the union ended up doing in their most recent CBA negotiation to try and avoid service time manipulation for young players. So but again, I wouldn't want to assess how he feels about that presently.
Right.
Even so though, I think what I would say is that clearly he's gone, he went through a lot of things that, maybe weren't always as obvious to someone who's watching a team that's winning every day, and Bryant's performing at the level that he's performing at. There's a lot of dynamics that go into how someone feels about where they're at and how they're playing and what it all kind of means to them.
Yeah. And so, when Kris is called up finally, I actually was at his debut game, and this was the ticket right there against the Padres, big game James. And they were giving away these cheesy hats. And here's me with Scott Boras, who was there that day. And it was like, but like I said, to see him, and I think he struck out like 3 times against big game James Shields that day against the Padres. But I think, like you said, it was all of a sudden, it just became this hype. If you remember the Brizzo baseball company, that was the big commercial, and he became the face, him and Anthony Rizzo, of that Cubs team. They win the World Series. They're on Saturday Night Live and Ellen and all this stuff. And, 2017, he had another great year. And sometimes I think people kind of forget, that he was still a great player in 2017 even. And it just seems to me like injuries really kind of derailed him in 2018 and 2019.
Yeah, I mean, he was an all-star again even in 21, I think. So, The question I have is like how much of it's still in there, and if you read the article, he talks about that, and he thinks that it's really like what he was in 16, 15, 17, those years. That's still there. Might not look the exact same, but he believes he can be that player. And listen, when you're 32 years old, I think that's kind of around when you might start to see like some obvious declines. Superstar players, but I mean, it really depends on the player, I guess. But yeah, I think that's the big question I have is like what's still in the tank is you mentioned 2017. That's 6 years ago, right? That he was probably in that like elite prime, like coming right up and just being like one of the best players, if not the best player in the game. So what constitutes success for someone who's making $28 million a year for the next 5 seasons? I mean, I think that's kind of where we're at right now. And baseball contracts are often lead you to kind of like when they don't look good and they're long term, it's like it can feel like an absolute abyss for both the team and the player. And I wonder, and it certainly feels like that's kind of where this is right now. It's even if at this point, if he does perform, I think it would probably fix some of the vitriol or the frustration directed at him. But even still, I mean, this Rockies team is I don't think I'm, speaking out of turn by saying they're not very good. They quite bad, in fact. And so what is the future here with, even if he is good again, or even if he's close to good again, like, is this still going to be an absolutely like disastrous pairing? And it kind of feels like that's where this is.
Right. And we get into 2021 and all of a sudden when everything kind of falls apart for that Cubs team, the writing's on the wall. The contracts are all up, but everybody assumed that they would extend one guy. They had Rizzo, Bryant, and Baez. And all the Cub fans like, well, which one are they going to keep? Let's keep Kris Bryant. No, let's keep, that was kind of the discussion. And at the end of the day, in 48 hours, they were all gone. Yeah. And the one that was the most stunning was Kris Bryant. I want to say they were in Washington when that happened. And when you talk about the pressure and the microscope that is playing for the Chicago Cubs, I remember they videotaped him. He had just gotten the call and he was grabbing his stuff. And I forget, he was crying on somebody's shoulder. He was truly upset to be gone from the Cubs.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's like I said, I think everything's complicated with this, especially with him. I mean, he's not like, there's some guys who are very much like one way or the other on everything. And that's like, even just talking to Brian, like I had a hard time even writing the article because you want to make sure like that you're not like creating a narrative. Right. And I think it's easy to do that, or you're not picking and choosing things to make something feel like what it is. And with Kris, like, I just think it's a little complicated at times. Like, he really loves playing baseball. He really cares. He takes a lot of pride in doing well, but he also maybe doesn't really love some of the things that come along with it and makes him maybe not want to do some of that stuff as much. And so it's like, there's a lot of nuance there. Yeah, like if he's crying when he gets traded, like it doesn't, I don't think that means that what he said to me about, wanting things to have gone differently with the Cubs, it doesn't mean like he didn't have a good time there or he didn't enjoy it. Like, I just think there's a lot of, complicated emotions that come along with everything he's been through and really just what his personality is. As someone that maybe is not, addicted to fame and the adulation that comes along with it, but can still love his time in Chicago and still love the Cubs fans and, have some incredible memories and know just how important he is to the city, because for whatever he might feel about the Cubs or his time there, you'd probably be more of authoritative on this topic, but I think Cubs fans will always love him. When you're a part of that, there's nothing that can take that away.
No, I mean, when you think about it, the curse ends with him picking up that ball and tossing it over to Rizzo and putting the arms in the air. It's an indelible image that will forever be in every Cub fan's head. And I always tell, I don't care if it's Kris Bryant, I don't care if it's Wilson Contreras, I'm never going to boo any member of that team, because what they finally delivered for all of us Cub fans who are very long suffering generationally. But, he goes over to the Giants and in your article, it talks about him deciding to sign with the Rockies, and it was bizarre. We knew he kind of wanted to be closer to home, like towards the West Coast. So I figured he'd either be in the NL West or the AL West. But the Rockies was so weird because they had just gotten rid of Arenado, and it was like, wait a sec, you were looked like you were jettisoning, contracts and salary, and then you take on Kris Bryant's contract. It made no sense.
I don't know what the Rockies do, to be honest with you. It's just like none of it makes a lot of sense to me. And they're such an obscure. There are some like organizations that are run poorly, and then there's like the Rockies. I think they're just like none of it really makes any sense. They don't really seem like they're in a position to compete. And honestly, my conversation with Bill Schmidt for this article, and I appreciate him talking to me for it, but I mean, I felt like he will like a lot of his answers are pretty like short, and in some instances I felt kind of terse, just because it was you're asking him like what's the thought process here, like why is it not working, like and they're really the answers to that are not. I don't think he might not know the answers to that. Like at the end of the day, I mean, it made no sense. Like, why would you basically pay $50 million to send Nolan Arenado to the Cardinals, and then a year later sign another third baseman at $182 million? Just none of that made any sense to me. It only made sense to anybody. And the Rockies, like, they have some good young players. Maybe they have, it's not like they're completely incompetent or anything like that. I mean, I think Buddy Black's a really great manager. He's a legendary, figure in the game. But man, it's like doesn't make any sense to me. And I don't really I agree with you. Like play closer to home, but the Rockies are definitely the closest team to Las Vegas, I think. At least, presently.
Yeah.
But it's still just confounding. I think in a lot of respects. And that was what I tried to answer a little bit with this story. Is like, well, what was the reason? And he said, like, I didn't do my enough research on the prospects, quite possibly. So, I think he got as close to saying that he's made some mistakes in this process without actively saying, like, I regret being here. I wouldn't want to put that narrative in his mouth or that thought in his head. But like, he did say some things that would lead you to believe that there's at least been some second guessing.
Now, the one quote that really jumps out to me from the article, he says, as a player, it's, he's talking about Colorado here. As a player, it's an easier spot to be in because you don't really have that outside pressure like the Dodgers are going to have. They invest a lot of money in good players, so they have to go out there and win. For us, we can be someone that no one talks about. And I guess that, it can be interpreted a couple different ways, but yeah. I just wonder how much, playing in a place in Colorado where there's a lot of transplants and, maybe people that are fans of other teams that didn't necessarily live there, but it just is not the pressure cooker that Chicago is. And I wonder how much that had to go into him choosing to move out to Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, the Rockies, the funny thing is the Rockies they're good fans there. I mean, they really show out for their team. Now, I think when you talk about like national expectations and the actual pathway to being successful, yeah, I think they're in a situation where they just got to pray that like a million things fall their way, which even that might not be enough. Yeah, I mean, to answer your question though, it's he doesn't outright say that, but there's enough things that I think kind of you can read, and if you read the article, you'll see a lot of quotes that I think all kind of add up to what you're asking, which is, yeah, I mean, listen, do I think the reason why he signed there was to avoid public spotlight? No. Do I think avoiding the public spotlight was a bonus maybe in all this? Yeah, I think that's maybe the way I would look at this. It's not trying necessarily to escape, but it's something that comes along with it. Then the better it is for Kris, maybe, because it's just he clearly didn't love being on a team that was if the team wasn't successful, it was really all gonna kind of fall apart. And maybe that's part of the experience of like playing those last couple of years in Chicago, where there were high expectations and they weren't met. And you would tell me better than I could tell you, but I know Cubs fans weren't happy about that, and it's probably like you play 162 games and it's not going your way. That can be like on a day-to-day basis quite frustrating and quite difficult. And if you're on a team that doesn't really matter if you're winning and losing, you might show up to the ballpark with a little bit clearer mind. And I'm not saying that's exactly where Kris is thinking, but I think if you read between the lines, that's probably part of it.
I think one day there's, I love this article, and I think one day there's going to be a great story told about the Cubs, when time passes after a little bit about what happened, because, we all thought that this was going to be, similar to what happened with the Astros. They kind of were following the same pathway of tanking, building up a farm system, making it to the postseason. But whereas the Cubs dropped off, you saw the Astros continue to have success, and the Cubs, after started to fall apart after 2017, and had to do their second rebuild. And so, part of me always wonders, how much moving Kris around, because that was one of the things that people, spoke highly of, is his versatility. When he was in Chicago, he played third base, played left field. Now in Colorado, he's playing some first base, exclusively is what it sounds like he's going to be playing. I wonder how much that had to do with it. The injuries had to do with it. And then the Cubs kind of cycled through a lot of hitting coaches from 2017, 2018, 2019. They went through like 3 different hitting coaches. So I always wonder if that might have impacted his progress. I don't know, but he's an interesting study and a really interesting person.
Yeah, no, he is. I mean, and I couldn't tell you all about the Cubs hitting coaches and maybe how that impacted him or not, to be honest with you. But yeah, I mean, it is interesting. Like, there's a good point about the Astros. I hadn't really thought of it like that. You're kind of on this trajectory, and it's just the paths diverge, and I mean, you wonder if everyone had kind of stayed together, like what might have happened. Like the Astros kind of have. I mean, they've had guys leave, but I think a couple of those core guys aren't going anywhere, and so it's they've been able to build around those players, and even when people come in and out, it's not necessarily debilitating. And again, I don't know if that's Joe Madden, and if it was really like if he was at issue there. I mean, I obviously covered him with the Angels, and things weren't great there with him. So it's I don't know. Obviously, he won a World Series there and was able to get the most out of that team, and took the Rays to the World Series as well. So, it's not a criticism of him necessarily, but it's hard to understand exactly why the Cubs did not necessarily kind of have that dynasty that it felt like they really could. And people are, if you look at Jose Altuve, and it looks like he's someone that really embraces all this stuff in Houston, and he like loves all of that. He wants to be an Astro for life. Like, he'll take a discount to be an Astro for life, I think. Maybe that's just not what Kris Bryant wanted necessarily. And it's not to compare, and it's not to say one person's better than the other. It's just what do people, everyone's got a different preference. You can't just, create a dynasty because you think you want one, or because it looks like it should be the case. And if you have a lot of expectations and it goes poorly for 1, 2, 3 years, I mean, that's enough to break things up.
Yeah, and the one thing that I guess it's just it feels like 2016 was just yesterday, but it's we're getting further and further away from it. But seeing in your article about how he likes being a guy that younger players can lean on, and he takes gratification in seeing those aforementioned prospects get call-ups and performing, it seems like he's settled into this role as kind of being a veteran leader now.
Yeah, leader is, it's hard to say. Like, I think you like that he's like a vocal leader. I don't know, because they have like Charlie Blackmon on that team that's obviously been there forever, and really in a lot of ways the face of the team, I think, because he's just been such a stalwart in Colorado. And that's to say he's not a leader. It's like, it's hard for me. I'm not a Rockies writer, and I'm not a Cubs writer, so it's I'm always hesitant to assess my opinions on things that I'm not 100% informed on. But I think you're right that he wants to be someone that people can lean on. And I said, like, is it kind of like the difference, the flip side of like being in Chicago when you first came up, when there's a bunch of young guys and a couple veterans that kind of you can kind of lean on, and he kind of was like, yeah, now I'm the old guy, and it's the opposite. And I don't think like I said to him, like, I don't think anyone's confusing the 2024 Rockies for the 2016 Cubs. But there's some through lines there. There's some comparisons you can make in terms of like who he is on this team now compared to who some of those guys were for him, 7, 8, 9 years ago. So, yeah, I mean, I think he's equipped to be a leader in some sense, and maybe isn't necessarily going to be the rah-rah guy in other ways.
Right. And, I think all in all, like I said, the majority of the Cub fans will always have when Kris came back for the first time in a Giants uniform, they had a video and people were cheering him, and he was emotional again. And, for me, I just remember I was at World Series Game 5, and the Cubs are down 3-1, and Jose Ramirez hits a home run in the second off, John Lester. And then, you saw Tito Francona getting that bullpen that was so dominant in 2016 up, and you're just wondering, is this it? And it was Kris Bryant who hits one off of Trevor Bauer that just changed the entire trajectory of that postseason. And for me, like, that's where I'm always going to kind of have a really soft spot in my heart for Kris Bryant, because it was so much fun when he was here, and the Grandpa Rossi stuff and the Brizzo company. And he would kind of do this Red Bull stuff where he was hitting home runs on the lake, Chicago River. It was a blast. And then, reading your article really kind of took me back to a lot of what was great about Kris. And again, I want Kris Bryant to have all the success in the world, just not against the Chicago Cubs when they play the Colorado Rockies.
Yeah, I mean, I hope people root for Kris, because he's a good guy. Like, I always like read the comments in these articles just to see how people react to the story. And, I see a lot of like people like angry at him, like, well, he's making 182. He's just like, doesn't care. It's like, that's not true. I mean, he's making $182 million, and, so that part is true. But like, it's just because you make a lot of money doesn't make it like, it doesn't make you have to be perfect and feel like truly happy all the time, and feel like, everybody, no matter how much money you make, has a bad day at work, or goes through a rough patch, or feels useless at times. And like, that's why I would say hope people do root for him, because, that was the first time I talked to Kris, and I was really appreciative of how candid he was. And I think if you ask him the right questions, he's going to give you the answers that, he truly believes. And I think that's why we ended up having the really good conversation that we did. It's just, you come at him from a genuine perspective, and I felt like he came back at me with a genuine answer. And so I hope people root for him, because it's like he said, I mean, I don't have a horse in this race, right? Like, my feeling on it is he's someone that genuinely cares about his profession, and cares about doing well, and cares about being there for his teammates. And just because he's not the athlete in the sense that everybody pictures him as or believes he should be, doesn't mean that he's not just as capable and just as, engaged as everybody else. And I think that's how I would look at this.
And I'm going to tell you honestly, Sam, I think part of the problem is the opposite of what people think. I don't think he doesn't care. I think he cares too much sometimes. And baseball can be a pressure cooker. And sometimes,
Absolutely.
you let that happen too much, and it's going to start to affect your mentality, in the batter's box. I think he cares too much sometimes to his own detriment. But I don't think, to me, I hope no one ever thinks that Kris Bryant doesn't care about his team or the game, because I truly believe he loves it. And some guys stay healthy, and some guys, just get injured a lot. We've seen that a lot in Chicago, like with Kerry Wood, for example, a guy that just looked absolutely dominant, but just couldn't stay healthy to be what we thought he truly could be. And I think the same goes with Kris Bryant. But I encourage all our listeners to take a look at this article by Sam Blum in The Athletic. It's phenomenal. Sam, where can our listeners find you on the socials?
Oh yeah, follow me on Twitter it's at Sam Blum and then the number 3. So SAMBLUM and the number 3. I hope I've got some good Cubs followers today, so I appreciate people engaging, and there's no better fan base. So clearly, just before we even got on, you were showing me your I guess man cave here, so it's quite impressive. And I don't know. It was a joy to talk to Kris and to write this, and I appreciate that Cubs fans saw something in it and have been reading it, and hopefully y'all keep following and reach out anytime.
Thank you so much for jumping on, Sam. You take care.
You too.
Season 3, episode 19 of the Fly the W podcast rolling on. Kris Bryant looks back. Don't forget to download, listen, subscribe to the Fly the W podcast, and leave Crawly and I a 5-star review. Crawly, nice job on the interview. Little free agency talk. We've had a little movement of the Boris 4.
Yeah, and who else but Jeff Passan? He seems to get the jump on these things. Matt Chapman, San Francisco Giants are in agreement, a 3-year, $54 million contract.
Oof, $54 million for him.
3 years. And so he's going to, just like the contract that Cody Bellinger signed, an opt-out after each of the first 2 seasons. So that just leaves Jordan Montgomery and Blake Snell as the 2 big free agents left.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens
I mean, the Giants have been dying to spend money, right, Crawly? They're begging, somebody please take our money, and Matt Chapman finally did.
Yeah, I think it's a good fit for them. And so, you just worry about Montgomery and Snell because, the pitchers are the ones that need spring training more than hitters. I'm not saying hitters don't, but pitchers need to ramp up their arms.
Right.
I think it's going to be really interesting to see
might
what
need
happens
extra
with those
time.
two.
I'm sure they're working out. They're not like sitting around in a hammock right now smoking a cigar, right? But they're going to need some work against real major league caliber live hitters.
Yeah, absolutely. But Dustin, since the last time we talked, some injuries pop up, which you never want to see because, you just want everyone to leave spring healthy, right? Ready to go. In the 8th inning of Tuesday's game, Brennan Davis got hit in the helmet with a curveball. He stayed in the game, but now apparently he's in concussion protocol on his day-to-day. That kid just can't catch a break. I swear to God.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I mean, poor guy can't catch a break.
Now, Patrick Wisdom was scratched before Thursday's game against the Rockies. They are saying right quad tightness again day to day. And then on the game against the Rockies, Ian Happ suffered what is being called a mild left hamstring sprain. He's optimistic to be ready for opening day, but he won't play in any Cactus League games in the short term. Craig Counsell said he'd have to play in games before opening day. The most important thing is we get Ian enough at-bats before opening day to be in a good spot offensively. Dustin, I don't know if Happ's going to be ready for opening day, but I'm wondering right now if this opens the door for one of the Cubs' young prospects. We've talked about Alexander Canario.
Right.
We talked
Casey,
about,
right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Owen Casey. And then you could put Bellinger in left and PCA in center.
You could do that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So this is going to be interesting to see how this all plays off. Also this weekend, I love Inside the Clubhouse with, and I think it was David Haw and Bruce were on this
They're
weekend.
together again. Yeah.
So back together again. And it was interesting because they had Cody Bellinger on and, we grabbed a couple clips that were probably the most important. Now, one of the clips that I put on here was from the press conference because David asked him specifically about the exit velocity that had some people concerned about Cody Bellinger. And Cody kind of just brushed it off and said, hey, I'm fine. But I remember that this was brought up in the press conference and Scott Boras specifically. This is why you have Scott Boras as your agent, because he explained it brilliantly. Here's this clip.
Yeah, I definitely obviously hear it and kind of brush it off. I think that there's a lot of different variables that go into it, and not to look at one certain stat to dictate a whole season. So, definitely trust myself as a baseball player to go out every single day and put my best product on the field, and I trust that the positive results are going to come, and like I said, believe in myself, and so yeah.
If I may add to that as well, those numbers have not been appropriately addressed because when we talk about soft contact, they don't talk about the counts. When he has 00, 10, 20, 31 counts, check what his contact strength is. And then when he took a two-strike approach this year, where all of a sudden he's now got, if not the best in the National League, but the second best in baseball of batting average with two strikes, going to a more contact approach rather than taking a customary powerful swing as he would early in the counts. So the data that's presented has not been talked about, the real benefits to major league teams where.
So what he's saying, what Boras is saying in that is that Cody, you remember how Anthony Rizzo with two strikes used to choke up on the bat and just put the ball in play, right? And so that's what Boras is saying is that, people are worried about his batted ball and exit velocity, but look at what the count is. If the count is 2-0, 3-0, 3-1, Cody Bellinger's hitting him as hard as anybody else. But, when he gets a two-strike approach, then he's kind of just not worried about it. He's hitting some weak contact on that, but he's making contact. And so he feels that, Cody was, that those numbers were not accurate. And I agree with Scott Boras on that.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you can't disagree with him, right?
Well,
a lot of the time you want to, but sometimes you have to say, okay, he was right.
Now, one thing that was interesting in the Inside the Clubhouse interview is he was asked about playing center field or first base. And Dustin, we've talked about that a lot of times. Does he want to play?
I'm glad they addressed this.
Yeah, I think for me, honestly, I just want to play. Honestly, I just want to play, and both positions are, entirely different, outfield and first base. But with that being said, as long as I'm in the lineup, I'm happy. And there hasn't been too much discussion yet on what the plan is, but for now I'm getting ready for both and doing all my work and preparation to play both. And I enjoy playing both. So for me, no preference. I think that as long as I'm out there every single day, that's something that I strive to do, and that's something I love to do.
So saying all the right things, and I hope he's, I think that's just going to add to his free agent value if he does opt out after this year. Saying the right things, being the good teammate, willing to play center and first. So, good answer. Yeah,
a great answer. Absolute great answer. Happy that he feels that way. That's why you like the guy so much. But we'll see. I want to hear what the decision makers have to say on that one.
Yep. And this was Cody talking about playing for Ross and Council.
Yeah, honestly, I've had nothing but positive experiences with both of them. Obviously, I had a full season with Rossi, and he was nothing but amazing. Super easy to talk to, an easy guy to play for. And same with Counts, man. I've only had a few days with him, and the overall vibe in this locker room is amazing. And like I said, I played against Counts so many times with him on the opposing side, and nothing but respect and for how he handles everything. And I've heard nothing but amazing things, and just to get to experience it firsthand over here has been great. And so for me, both nothing but positive experiences and positive words. And this season, excited to get out there and play, and and give it our best shot, see what happens.
So, saying all the right things, but, there's a reason people like Cody Bellinger in the clubhouse. And I think this interview, which was a great one by Bruce and David, just kind of goes to show why these guys wanted him back in the clubhouse.
Yeah, good dude. Like everything he had to say. Great interview. Do yourself a favor. Hit that Odyssey app and hit the rewind and find that interview for yourself if you want to hear the whole thing.
Absolutely. One other thing, there are some Sammy Sosa updates 2 weeks from now. The Chicago Sports Spectacular is having Sammy Sosa. And so, Dustin, we have Phil Smith and Mitch Adelstein to give us a few more details that I think our fans will be interested in. Joining me now on the Fly the W podcast, I'm happy to have on Mitch Adelstein and Phil Smith. They have some exciting news about the Chicago Sports Spectacular. That's 2 weeks away. We're almost there, right, gentlemen?
We are almost. Been a lot of work, but we're, like I said, we're right there.
Well, I think a lot of people are truly excited about this spectacular. I'm always excited. Most people are, but this one just kind of seems to be at a different level because of Sammy Sosa. How did this all come about?
Phil, I'm going to turn it to Phil. Let him give you the quick rundown.
Sure. Well, Crawly, as you know, we met at Club 400, and a couple of years ago, I was having a conversation with Stu, and I just said, Stu McVicker, who is the principal CEO of Club 400 and the brainchild behind it. I said, what's your ultimate goal to get back to Chicago? And he said, Sammy Sosa. And I said, well, we'll work on it. Well, we tried, and the ducks didn't get in a row, so to speak. And so last fall, I stopped by the show because I have a rather large baseball card collection, including Jackie Robinson rookie card. And I've been to the show quite a few times. When I was walking around, I went up, introduced myself to Mitch, and said, I got a great ambassador for your next show in March, and that's Ray Burris, which Ray will have a table at the show too. And Ray and I and Mitch had a call, and it was just great chemistry. And I asked Mitch that day, what do you think if we could get Sammy Sosa back? Have you looked into it? He goes, I've tried, but I think everybody's tried over the last 20 years.
Absolutely.
And if we could make it happen, it would be phenomenal. And we have some ideas. And from that point, Mitch and I bonded, and we put the train on the track, and we've been going pretty fast. So a lot of dots to connect, but they're all being connected, and proud to say, and I'll kind of let Mitch discuss, where he went from there, and I'll chime in as necessary.
Yeah, like I said, it was Phil had some great relationships to be able to put, like I said, put the dots together, and we were just super excited because, like you mentioned, we've been chasing to try to get Sammy back for at least 10 years. The website, when we ask people who would you like to see, it's always up there with Michael Jordan and Sammy Sosa. And we said, well, neither one does shows, so we were able to land Sammy, so that's awesome. Really looking forward to it.
And the thing that I am really excited for the fans is the VIP dinner with Sammy at Gibson's Steakhouse, because, I love the spectacular. I love going to autograph shows, but there's something different when you actually kind of get to spend a little time getting to know the person instead of kind of, when you're getting something signed and there's a big line behind you, you got to move,
Right.
You're not just sitting there. This is going to be such a relaxed atmosphere. And Smitty, you're going to actually be emceeing it, so you got to be super excited.
Oh, absolutely. And it was even more rewarding when I spoke to Sammy about a week ago, and he said, I got about 15 minutes. I'm really busy. We ended up being on the phone for an hour. So I'll be as a spokesperson working with Mitch for when he arrives, and it's all, there's a lot to be done over those 3 days, but Friday is a very exciting day. We're going to start off by having Sammy on the Steve Cochran morning show on WLS 890. We'll be talking about, Steve's a big fan of Sammy, and it's the first true interview back as far as the media is concerned, just on the radio. And then we head to the Shriners Hospital. And it was interesting when Sammy called, he said to Mitch, he said, I need two things, if you wouldn't mind. One is, what will we do in regards to publicity? And second of all, I'd like to go to a children's hospital. Well, being a Shriner for 30 years, Mitch called me, and that was a no-brainer. We got that covered pretty quick. And I've been working on all the publicity and where he's going to be. But the Shriner stuff is exciting. Like Sammy, Sammy's a new guy. He's a new person. Learned that on the phone. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when he was in his prime here, he's always been for the fans. That's why he's coming back. But back then, he concentrated on Chicago. He concentrated on the Cubs. He concentrated on making the fans happy and producing, which he did. I mean, his results are stellar, right? Don't you agree, Crawly?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, 3 seasons of 60-plus home runs. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, and from there, he said, I need to make a decision because I'm running at 200 miles per hour like a Ferrari in the public eye. And when I decided to retire in 2007, I knew it was important for me to become a family man and a husband. So in that time, he has now raised 6 kids between the ages of 11 and 31. And anybody that has children or family that's raised kids gets that. And I could never begin to imagine the pressure he was under during those times, and maybe didn't make some right, good judgment calls at times. But, I don't, like I said, there are quite a few people, including Mitch. I think yourself also. I don't know how Taylor Swift does it. Everywhere you go, and, back then you didn't have social media or the internet and all that kind of, and camera phones. But I tell you, just talking to him for that hour was so humbling and rewarding. He is absolutely excited. WGN is going to meet us at the Shriner Hospital, and then we're visiting some of the kids over there, the children, and then we're going to meet with Jared Payton for the first media interview with, Jared Payton's with WGN as a sportscaster, Walter Payton's son. So that's what I've been working on. And then we have that dinner that night, and the dinner is growing. There's a lot of excitement. Chicago, Cubs fans and just sports fans, everybody waits to the last minute, right? And so we're expecting a stellar evening. I'm going to be hosting along with Mitch. What he does, great things. Been doing this forever, and I'm excited about the weekend. It's going to be incredible messaging and welcoming Sammy home to Chicago.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Mitch, I'm looking at the deal, and it really is the best deal. And spots are filling up. I mean, it's almost sold out here. I'm looking at this, and it includes the dinner at Gibson's. You get an autographed Sammy bat. You get a picture with Sammy on your cell phone, a Q&A that Smitty's going to be doing. And then, like I said, he's going to go around to the tables and talk to everybody. And as someone that's kind of been able to experience having one-on-one time with these players, there's nothing like hearing those stories and listening to it. And not only that, you get the VIP package for the entire show, which is a huge value.
Absolutely. You come across the street and it's a 3-day show, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and you get all the VIP perks that come along with that. But now, like you said, it's a great atmosphere. I mean, to be able to sit for 2+ hours in the room with a very small group of people, you're probably talking about 25, 30 people max that's going to be there. Being able to, like I said, probably ask Sammy a question and be involved in the Q&A and hear stories. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. So we're excited to be able to bring it to the fans. And like I said, we know we just put it up recently. It's going pretty quickly and won't have too many seats for too long.
Yeah, and when you get that 3-day weekend pass in the VIP, you get front of the line privileges. So that's really awesome. You get to go to the room where you can relax, which has been a nice new addition. Yes. And so if you're a Cub fan, you don't just have to get Sammy Sosa. There's a lot of Cubs players that are at this show.
Absolutely. You've got Moises Alou, Mark Grace, Derek Lee. So there's, tremendous amount of Cubs, and we got the whole, sports spectrum covered for Chicago, the Jim McMahons and the Jermaine Dyes and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of the Bulls, Dennis Rodman. So it'll be a great weekend. Let's say a star-studded opportunity for all the fans, sports fans in general, to come out. And not only the players, and you've got over 400 tables of sports collectibles, as you well know from being there, trading cards, memorabilia, the whole 9 yards. So it's going to be a great weekend, and we look forward to seeing everybody there for sure.
Don't forget Ray Burris.
And Ray Burris, absolutely. Ray's going to be at our forward area. He'll be there all 3 days, and hasn't made an appearance there. And was looking forward to meeting everybody, and I think all the Cubs fans are going to love come out and say hi to Ray for sure.
Ray is one of the funniest, nicest, sweetest guys, and his stories are absolutely hilarious. So I think fans are really going to like that. As you mentioned, this is Mark Grace's first signing since being inducted into the Cubs Hall of Fame. Right. Moises Alou, who is Sammy's teammate, D. Lee, another one. And D. Lee's not a guy that comes out that much. And then another guy that has been kind of out of the spotlight lately is Chris Coghlan.
Absolutely.
And so for anybody that's especially looking to get those World Series pieces done, Chris Coghlan's a guy that you don't know when the next time he may sign. It may be a while. So I would encourage people to get those Chris Coghlan tickets as soon as you can.
Yeah, we were real excited to be able to get him out as well because, like you said, he hasn't been back in a long time, and tickets are selling very well on him. Everybody wanting us to complete those World Series team pieces for sure.
I already have somebody getting them for me. I already bought my ticket. Hey, you got to get me Coghlan because I'm like freaking out because I'm going to be in Mesa, Arizona watching the Cubs, and I'm like, oh my God, they're having one of the best Cub lineups that I can remember, especially for a spring show. So you guys have absolutely done a tremendous job with this show, and the fact that Sammy's coming back, it's about time. And I think every Cub fan feels that way. And I wish I could be there because I think the love Sammy is going to get that weekend will hopefully encourage him to keep coming back to Chicago because he made a generation of Cub fans.
Agree.
I think you're going to see a whole different perception regarding Sammy Sosa and who he is. Sammy Sosa, the man, not Sammy Sosa, the celebrity back in the day. He's like you and I, committed, dedicated to his family. His big thing is I can't wait to meet the Cubs fans. He's not going to sign and say next. He wants to say hello to people. That's why the dinner is so important because it's a little bit, at these things. I've seen some of the signatures where they're just moving and grooving where the dinner is going to change everything, right? You're going to allow more one-on-one time, and it's really a tremendous icon that we've been waiting to come back home. So it's great stuff.
And I'm so excited that he's going to make that trip to the Shriners Hospital. They do such great work there. So it's going to be tremendous that the kids are going to have the opportunity to meet Sammy Sosa. And I just got a feeling it's going to be just a weekend that Cub fans will not forget.
For sure. No, we're super excited about it. Like I said, from start to finish, from literally when he's in town from Friday morning on till Sunday. Like I said, it's going to be a Cub fest in that standpoint, a love fest with Sammy back in town for sure.
And if people are interested, they can go on your website, ChicagoSportsSpectacular.com. That's where you can buy the tickets. And if anybody has any question about how it works or what the process is, my DMs, there's a phone number you can contact. And the people with Chicago Sports Spectacular are great answering questions. And if you want to send me a DM, I've been to so many of these shows. I can help you out however you want. But I really encourage people to get your tickets now because they will sell out. It is limited amounts as far as some of these players are concerned.
Absolutely.
And Mitch, what's the advantage of getting your tickets today versus waiting for the show last?
Pre-sale, the bonus to that is always tickets are called numerically. So obviously 1, 2, whatever, 300, 500, 700. And obviously the earlier you buy your pre-sale tickets, the sooner you'll be in line to meet the athlete, and especially if you have multiple celebrities that you want to get an autograph of, it gets you through the line quicker. And we also have a VIP package, and again, that's part of the Sammy dinner package as well. You get to be a VIP, but even if you're not participating in that, you can buy a VIP, which gets you a bracelet basically, which gives you VIP access to the front of the autograph lines, and that's called first before even ticket number 1. So it's a real nice touch for people who are buying multiple autographs, or the guys who, are going to have tremendous lines, and Sammy and Hulk Hogan and people like that.
And I would say the other advantage of getting your tickets early is there's a separate line that you pick those up. So if you don't do it early, you have to sit in line to buy tickets for the admission, and then that everything takes longer. As opposed to buying your tickets early, you can buy your admission ticket, you go in a separate line, and you're right in like 5 minutes.
Yeah, you can buy everything online. You can buy your admission ticket. You can buy, like I said, you can buy VIP. You can buy access. You can buy individual tickets, inscription tickets, photo opportunity tickets. So everything's there online, and makes it real easy for you. Like you said, this way you're in, boom, you're into the show, and you're enjoying the weekend. You're off to a flying start. Well,
again, guys, when the story gets written about Sammy's return, your guys' faces are going to be right up there as far as, pulling off what I think is unthinkable. And Phil, Mitch, maybe you can do the same magic with John Lackey, huh?
We've been trying there as well. So maybe Sammy will give us a number. Maybe he's got a connection there.
Well, the Chicago Sports Spectacular is coming up, ladies and gentlemen. You do not want to miss this outing. It is going to be March 15th through the 17th, and don't miss out. This is going to be great.
Yep. We expect to have a full room at the Rosemont Convention Center. It's only been done once, right, Mitch?
Yeah, that's it. Only been done one time like that. And like I said, we're super excited. And like I said, just right around the corner, basically 2 weeks away. And like I said, just can't wait for it to get rolling again.
And just be careful, Cub fans, because the online ticket sales end a week from this Monday. So Monday the 4th, a week from the Monday. After that, you can't get your pre-tickets. Now you're sitting in line. So I would get them early.
Exactly. Absolutely. Hope to see you at dinner, though. Except you, Crawly. I'll get you a menu.
I love it. Take care, guys, and thank you so much for jumping on.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
And Crawly, the Cubs have a full slate of games coming up before the next time we talk. They're going to take on the Padres Monday, Royals Tuesday night games, and then they're going to take on the Angels out at Sloan.
Yeah, and those night games are a little cold in Arizona. Don't be fooled, but, hopefully the Cubs can get it done.
That's a wrap. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and subscribe to that Fly the W podcast. Follow the socials, Facebook, Instagram. Of course, we're on Twitter, and email Crawly and I, flythew670@gmail.com. And you can watch us on YouTube by subscribing to the 670 The Score YouTube channel. Crawly, have a great start to your week, and we'll talk midweek.
Sounds good. And go Cubs. Hey, guys, it's Crawly. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date with our latest episodes. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Go Cubs!